Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to give my first few impressions of the preseason patch and generally touch on all of the new or modified things that Riot have added or changed about the game, and generally kind of talk about where the game is at right now. Now, I did want to add a quick caveat here, which is that it is preseason, and preseason tends to have an interesting influence on how the game is played and what is currently being seen, right? Ranked doesn't matter right now, so no one's really taking it very seriously, and generally people just want to play with the new or changed stuff, right? That's generally the emphasis behind preseason changes, and that's generally what people are trying to do with it. And as a result of this, you have a lot of people who are doing things not that because they're good, but because they just want to experience the new stuff. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing so much tank play. This is one of the reasons why we're seeing so much Heartsteel in particular, and I'll touch on Heartsteel a little bit more in the future. But so generally speaking, what I want to get the point across is that a lot of the stuff on this patch is being displayed in an environment that it isn't really intended to be used in, right? This is an environment where you have a lot of people playing tanks, you have a lot of people trying to stack lots of health, you have a lot of people playing new or interesting things in the jungle just to experience it. It's a very different format from what we would ordinarily see, and as a result, I want to clarify basically that everything is subject to change, and that a lot of the things that we are seeing aren't necessarily as broken or as strong as we may consider them. So with that sort of caveat aside, let's go ahead and talk through my first few impressions of some of the preseason changes. In terms of itemization, of course, a ton of people have been playing tanks because they got a brand new suite of mythic items. I've talked about Heartsteel at length. I have an entire another video where I discuss Heartsteel and everything that's going on with that item in particular. And suffice it to say, I think that Heartsteel may be overrated a little bit. It would not surprise me if it was overpowered, but I do think that because Heartsteel is an infinitely stacking item, the player base, and it's funny, Riot have actually confirmed this, the player base overwhelmingly is positive and loves interacting with anything that lets them go infinite. It sort of doesn't matter what it is. Like, people just love being able to watch number go up forever or be able to go infinite on any champion they possibly could ever play. So as a result of this, this is one of the reasons why Heartsteel is seeing a lot of play. Its consideration as being broken is one of the other reasons, but suffice it to say, it's why I'm not entirely sold that Heartsteel is broken. I just think it's a really popular item because it lets you go infinite. Conversely, I think that when the focus finally shifts off Heartsteel, people will realize that Jack Show the Protean is actually extremely strong. I've made a video about this as well for completely different reasons, but I'll have it linked down in the description regardless. But Jack Show the Protean, I think, is a very, very powerful item. There are a ton of tanks that can get a ton of value off of Jack Show the Protean, most notably Cassante, our newest tank. I think he has a really strong interaction with Jack Show the Protean in general. And I feel like once we sort of get off the Heartsteel train, either because we realize it's not that good or because Riot nerf it, Jack Show is definitely going to show itself as a very, very powerful item. And if you're not already on the Jack Show train, definitely get on it. Radiant Virtue, by comparison, I haven't seen that much, and it's not hard to see why. Radiant Virtue has a very niche pool of champions that actually want to build it or can get any value from it whatsoever. And even those champions, you don't always start a fight off with your ultimate, right? If you're Sejuani, for example, maybe you hold on to Glacial Prison because you want to wait and see if they flash or dash away. Amumu, maybe you rope onto the front line and you wait to press R because you want more champions to dogpile you first, right? There are situations in which you don't always want to be initiating with your ultimate, even on the champions where you want to be initiating with your ultimate, and as a result of this, I kind of wonder if it's a very good item at all. There's a potential that it is very strong, but I feel like it's a very niche item, and just not very many champions are ever going to actually be building this. Of course, tanks were the only champions to get new mythics. Rod of Ages has also made its triumphant return, but in all honesty, you guys, I don't think Rod of Ages is very good in a 2022 environment. I think that when Rod of Ages was removed, it was sort of the best of a variety of choices that weren't particularly good, just in general, overall. I think that there were a ton of items that just didn't exist back in the day, and Rod of Ages was a way to triage those items not existing. By comparison, I think that the current environment in which Rod of Ages exists isn't very good, because a lot of those champions have sort of realized they have new items at their disposal, and they're like, oh yeah, why would I build Rod of Ages when I have something like Everfrost, which gives me CC to layer with my CC, or when I can build Leandries as my, like, primary item, right? I don't have to suffer through building this Rod of Ages because it's the best thing for me. I can build a Leandries, which is giving me mana and gives me the burn passive all in one sweet, sweet package. Why would I ever bother trying to do anything besides that, right? And so in that regard, it just feels like Rod of Ages has sort of fallen out of favor. I think there are some champions that can still use it, namely AP Bruisers like Silas, but it's kind of sad in a way, but I feel like, honestly, I'm not going to be building Rod of Ages, even on the champions that we've taught that historically have wanted it, like Ryze or Karthus. The fighter items I really haven't seen. Spear of Shojin was one I called out as potentially being scary, but because it's always on and doesn't have an activated effect when you cast your ultimate, it doesn't feel like it can be that powerful because it has to have that limitation on it. Now, to be fair, I haven't seen the champions that historically have broken Spear of Shojin, the Rivens or Tryndamirs. Everyone's building Heartsteel, of course, and those champions don't synergize well with Heartsteel, but we'll see. Suffice to say, right now, it doesn't feel like it's too bad. But anyways, let's move on to potentially the biggest change of the patch, which are the jungle changes. Now, honestly, the companions have been less annoying than I maybe initially considered them to be. I'm still not a big fan of the companions in general. The Gust Walker in particular, I really feel like has a very visually noisy auto attack, which just is distracting and disconcerting while you're trying to farm. But generally speaking, the companions themselves are like fine. I don't think that they're particularly cool. I don't think they're particularly interesting. Mostly they're just a way to visualize some of the jungle mechanics that have always existed, and in that regard I think they're fine. The jungle does feel a little bit more interesting, though, because Smite no longer heals you, and jungle camps only heal you after you've killed them. You lost out on the sustain you would ordinarily have in the jungle. I think we all remember the days of hitting the entirety of the Raptor camp with one ability and watching your health bar just shoot up because of how much health per second you're gaining for being in combat with six jungle monsters at the same time. That's no longer the case, so the situation of surviving a team fight with 100 health left, going to your Gromp, smiting it, and then getting the heal off of it after you kill it, and being back at full, right? That's no longer a thing. But the ability to get sort of constant top-offs as you farm is quite nice, because it sort of leaves you constantly ready to fight, as opposed to in the previous situation where you were really dependent on using your smite to help keep you topped up throughout a fight. I think that's sort of one of the changes that's been made with the new system. The new jungle items as well, I don't know that I'm a big fan of them in particular. The need to constantly farm has definitely had a big impact on the game. You sort of have to be able to keep your farm up to go from camp to camp, but also I've not been using the bonus treats mechanic as much as I maybe could be or should be, so that's maybe something that we can look into. Certainly, unless you have more than 6 bonus treats, that's still a one full clear through your jungle to get rid of all of your bonus treats and basically catch up to where you would have been treats-wise, without having to have actually cleared your camps very efficiently. So maybe that's something to look into a little bit more. But for right now, certainly the emphasis seems to be more on farming because you don't want to get outsmote. That's a thing that's a way more common occurrence in the new patch nowadays, especially if you fail a couple of ganks or die early on and you fall behind in farming. And your opponent hits that 20 treat mark, they get their upgraded smite, maybe you're still back at 29, and it's like, oh crap, I gotta get my farm on because otherwise I cannot contest objectives. That's something that was around in seasons past that disappeared because of just how easy the other system was to get your upgraded smite, but now it's definitely something to consider a lot more often. The upgraded versions of these items as well, powerful, but not that powerful. I know I was worried about the red smite for a while because of the 5% current health plus the slow, but realistically, it's not been that powerful. And I think the blue smite, if anything, is going to be the one that the professionals are going to build because the bonus movement speed in Bush, essentially the mini Nidalee passive, I think is very, very powerful, especially for making map rotations happen, and I think it'll be very strong. My question will be which pros tend to go, because these are all generic enough that any champion can build them. Yeah, there are better synergies with with the blue jungle item on assassins, for example, versus other classes, but fundamentally, you can build it on anybody, right? There's nothing that says you can't, so We'll see how it shapes up when the pros finally get their hands on it. I think the jungle system is just sort of distinctly meh. And while we're talking about the jungle system, the new Chem Drake and Chem Rift are disappointing, honestly. I really liked the old Chem Soul and the old Chem Rift. I know they weren't balanceable, but I thought they were just interesting designs. I thought they were really, really cool to play with. And I know they were polarizing, which is one of the reasons why they were removed, but the new version just feels super, super sanded down. It doesn't feel like there's anything in particular that makes this stand out or makes it particularly interesting. It just is kind of there, and I'm not that excited about it. The buff is fine, the soul is fine, probably the weakest soul of any of the souls though. And the Rift also there's just not that much that makes it interesting. The plants are neat, and the upgraded plants, for the most part, though, are just the same as the plants you might be used to before, without that much to differentiate themselves from each other. I do think that the double-strength blast cones, in particular, are very powerful, and there's the potential for some really cool playmaking opportunities with those, being on the side of the lane, popping the blast cone to jump over a large chunk of terrain, and suddenly you're a bruiser who's hit a flank position extremely quickly. That is potentially very powerful, but generally Chemrift is just kind of boring, especially compared to the previous version, and I am disappointed to see it disappear, but I do think it's interesting for the game to have a bigger variety of rifts and less sameness in terms of which souls are actually on the table. Finally, some of the odds and ends on this patch. The communication tools, I was a little sketchy about the objective voting system, but having played it in solo queue, I actually think this is a very good change. I know, maybe controversially, but I mostly played in a 5-stack, and honestly, you don't need it then, because you can just say in voice chat, hey guys, let's go Baron, and people will tell you if they want to or not, right? But if you're in a solo queue environment, I think it's relevant to be able to ping an objective, to have the voting thing appear, and then for your team to be able to tell you yes or no, right? And if they don't tell you, then it's on you, right? You can't have expected backup for having started Drake after pinging it if your teammates didn't respond or responded in the negative. If they respond positive and they don't come, then you can say, guys, you told me we were going to do this, right? We were aligned. Why didn't you show up? But I think that it's a fair thing for you to be able to look at this now and to have better communication with regards to objectives. Some of the other things that they've added, though, the pinging in particular, I'm a little frustrated with, in all honesty, because of how the pings make it a little bit harder, in all honesty, to ping the things you actually want to ping, right? You used to have 4 segments, now you have 8, and it's a little bit harder sometimes for the muscle memory to adjust to being a lot more precise if you want to ping on my way or danger as opposed to push or bait. I also feel like a lot of these pings are just so specific, I do not know where they're going to get used. The bait ping has already been turned into another BM ping, similarly to the enemies missing ping, but the other 3 I've just straight up not seen used at all in their intended context. It's almost always been a miss ping by somebody else, so I think just a wasted opportunity, wasted dev time, but we'll see if maybe people use them more once they kind of realize that they're there. But generally, I think that the preseason patch has been fine. It's been a period of change, but not too much change. I think that the game generally feels the same, especially if you're still laning. So in general, I'm happy with that. I like it when the game goes through periods of very small change, because it means that Riot can really fine-tune stuff, as opposed to releasing lots of busted stuff and then trying to sort out the fallout from that over the course of months, right? So this is a very welcome preseason, in my opinion, but you'll have to let me know what you think of it down in the comment section below, especially if you have any strong feelings towards the tank items or towards the jungle changes. Let me know all of that down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.